Welcome to Cisco Tech Beat, the podcast that explores the people and stories behind what inspires the newest innovation. I'm your host, AB, and I'm thrilled to welcome our very own Guy Diedrich, SVP and Global Innovation Officer, Country Digital Acceleration, CDA, Cisco Networking Academy, and Learning and Certification. Guy and his team work with global government and industry leaders to drive mass-scale digitization and skill development to boost GDP, create jobs, and foster sustainable innovation worldwide. Guy, welcome to TechBeat.
Very happy to be here, AB. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. I want to talk about, of course, CDA. And I think for our listeners, whenever we talk about CDA, it's common that we speak about the digital divide. And for anyone who's not sure what that is, it's essentially the division between those who have access to technology or the gap between the people who have access and those who don't. So just for some background information, would you paint a picture of just how big this division is, what some of the main causes for it are, and then why our CDA program at Cisco is really beneficial in terms of helping countries achieve digital equity?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one of the key things that the CDA or Country Digital Acceleration program really focuses on. So today, at this very moment, 35% of the world's population are unconnected to the internet in any meaningful way. It's an extraordinary number when you think about it. I mean, you're talking about billions of people that don't have access to the internet. They wouldn't be able to do what we're doing today just by connecting and talking about it. Um, One of the things that we set out to do was to connect those unconnected, to serve underserved populations. And it's a big part of everything that we do inside CDA. And if we were to connect that 35% of the unconnected around the world, we would instantly lift 500 million people out of poverty.
Wow.
And we would also, though, contribute $6.7 trillion to global GDP. So it's not just the right thing to do, it's also the economically prudent thing to do. And in the 50 countries in which we operate in CDA, connecting the unconnected is always one of the pillars. And we're not just talking about rural regions. People think that areas are unconnected just because they are in deserts or out in rural regions. And that's absolutely true. But many of the unconnected are actually inside some of our biggest city centers. And we learned that particularly during COVID, when all of a sudden everybody had to go online, and we found out that massive parts of populations around the world were not online. And I also want to talk a little bit about the difference between availability and access, because they're two very different things. Having the internet available, having connectivity available is certainly foundational. But making it accessible is something very different, because there are a lot of people that have it available, but they can't afford it, or they don't have the equipment to connect to it. So what we aim to do is to connect the unconnected and make it accessible to those that need it the most. I'll give you a quick example of one of the projects that we took on. It was a digital canopy project in Toronto. Toronto, one of the most connected uh, cities in all of the world. And yet, what we found in COVID is that there were entire blocks of underserved populations that did not have access. They did not have accessibility. And so we set up the digital canopy, where literally we put Cisco kit on top of buildings and created a mesh around those buildings so that those residents, those underserved residents, had access to the same sort of connectivity and speed of connectivity as their wealthier neighbors throughout the city. So we find that a lot, and there are lots of opportunities to continue to do that good work.
Absolutely. And I imagine there is a huge element of trust when it comes to getting cities or countries around the world to adopt Cisco's CDA program. So, you and I have talked before about trust, but I would love you to just dive in there a little bit and talk about why it's so crucial to have trust when we're, doing our CDA initiatives in countries, and what are the qualities that make Cisco an excellent partner when we are working with global governments and leaders.
Well, trust is at the core of everything that we do in CDA. The entire CDA program was built on trust. And let me
Mm.
explain why that's so important. So, CDA is a program that we stood up 10 years ago to work with countries around the world to help them accelerate their national digital agendas. Now, we typically work with presidents and prime ministers from the outset. They have to be the sponsor, the initial sponsor of our engagement. Because what we're doing is we're aligning to those national digital agendas that were, in some cases, created with consultancies where they really put a lot of thought into them. They made them very aspirational. They're really well thought out and they're specific to the priorities of that country. Well, in working with those consultancies, what the presidents and prime ministers got back was a PowerPoint
Hmm.
and didn't have an execution plan. And so, what Cisco did was step in and say, we're going to develop that execution plan for you, with you. We're going to create a national digital architecture and then we are going to develop individual projects, then fund those projects to help you see the value of digitization. So, in doing so, those country leaders, those presidents and prime ministers, were investing an awful lot of trust in Cisco. They were making themselves initially vulnerable to us
Hmm.
by choosing us, choosing a San Jose based ICT company, and to help them make some of the most important decisions that they'll make for their populations in the next 20 years. Well, we needed to make sure that we were in the game as well because trust is built on shared vulnerability, a voluntary shared vulnerability to one another, where in your most vulnerable state, you don't let each other down. And in
Uh-huh.
each interaction, you build a little bit more trust. And over time, that trust can be incredibly valuable. So, what we had to do was to create our own vulnerability, and we did so by investing directly in these projects. We were first money in on these projects for their national digital agenda to show them the value without any promise of return. We just wanted to show them that digitization could make the sort of difference that they expected inside their communities. So now we have a shared vulnerability. And with each interaction, we build that trust over time. And now we have a seat at the table. We are now that trusted technology advisor and partner to governments all over the world, 50 of them, where we help them make decisions, we help them execute, we show them the value, and those relationships, all built on trust, are some of the most valuable relationships Cisco has around the world.
Absolutely, and I love that notion of shared vulnerability and that accountability partner. It's not a one sided transactional motion. It's really a community effort, and I think because of that, I'm kind of segueing here, but we are now this year celebrating CDA's 10th anniversary, which is an incredible achievement. You mentioned, 50 countries and growing and I know there are something like 1,600 active or completed digitization projects. And we're talking about all kinds of industries like healthcare, education, smart cities, quantum research, critical infrastructure, you name it. So I wanted to ask you a quick question just about this milestone. Just on an emotional level, how does it feel to have achieved 10 years of this kind of success, and then I have a second part which is kind of like looking ahead. are we thinking of, are we going to continue expanding like that? Are we looking to expand in, further into different regions? Are we looking to kind of expand within the regions we already service? Just your thoughts on the achievement and then kind of what you see happening with CDA in the future.
Yeah, well, I will tell you that when we started CDA 10 years ago, very modestly, right, we started in France.
Mm,
I'll date the program with President Hollande and Prime Minister Valls.
wow.
They were our first um, participants in the program. They're the ones, all credit to France, they're the ones that took the risk to invite Cisco in and ask us to help. Interestingly enough, once the program got going, they deferred it to a very talented economy minister to actually drive the program on the ground, whose name was Macron. And interestingly, he then resigned, formed En Marche, and became president, and then took the entire program national. So we had a very fortunate start. We then went into to UK, Germany, Italy, and India. Those were our first five countries. And as you said, we're now in 50 countries around the world. 50 world leaders have selected Cisco to help them with their national digital agendas. And we've done over 1,600 projects.
Wow.
If you had asked me 10 years ago where this program would be, I never could have imagined that it would flourish as it has. And what it's done for Cisco, in addition to creating incremental bookings and doing the things that we need to do to keep the program sustainable and contribute to Cisco as a publicly traded for profit entity, it's also allowed people to see Cisco in a different light. So we're no longer just those box sellers that respond to RFPs. We're now that trusted technology advisor and partner for the digital age. And quite honestly, the AI age, the quantum age, whatever age is in the future, we're going to be there for them. And that's the legacy of the 10 years is extraordinary growth, extraordinary opportunity, but really lifting populations to new heights. Because digitization can do that, and having the right partner, in this case in Cisco and our global partner network, is absolutely the right group to have in place, because these investments, importantly, AB, are 3-year investments. We're not talking about one offs. We're
Mm,
there for the long haul. And in many countries around the world, we continue to invest. We'll do second round, third round, in some cases, fourth rounds of investment in these countries to help them grow. And really, to transition then into the second part of the question is what's next? What's next is continued investment in our 50 countries. As they continue to invest in themselves, we will continue to support them and invest in them along the way. The value proposition is of Cisco CDA more than anything is its agility. So, as conditions change, as geopolitical conditions change, economic conditions change, we are agile enough to shift with those countries. The trust is already established. So, we don't have to reestablish that in order to shift with them. They just come to Cisco and say, hey, this is where we need to go. Are you there? And of course, the answer is yes. I'll give you an example. Ukraine never imagined they were going to be invaded by Russia. And what we were able to do was to stand up a program and then help them through what is the most difficult time that country has ever faced. When they're at their most vulnerable, Cisco stepped in and said, whatever we can do. And that priority has shifted. Those priorities have shifted so many times since the full scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, um, that we've just pivoted with them, and we've never left their side. Even in as recent as this morning, we were having conversations about the next pivot that we can
mm,
make there. We're now standing up programs in Africa where again, very vulnerable populations that have higher incidences of lack of connectivity than other parts of the world. And we're starting to make those investments. So you're going to see us expand our efforts in Africa and in other underserved regions of the world, while never missing a beat with the existing countries that brought us here, the existing countries that trusted us from the outset. We will continue to reward that trust through our commitment to them.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's not a set it and forget it approach. It's really, you're sticking with it until countries can help themselves, and when they need us, we're there for them, and we can expand to other regions if necessary. I really love that. And of course, this is obviously a big part of our purpose, to power an inclusive future for all.
Mhm.
But it also is interesting. In 2016, Cisco set a goal to impact 1 billion lives by globally by 2025. And we actually achieved that goal a year early in 2024. So this is sort of another future looking question, but because Cisco is also a company that is all about innovation and sustainability and technology advancements. Do you believe that technology, as it evolves and becomes better and faster, is that going to help you in your role heading CDA to help transform countries? Is it? Do you think technology is it a plus?
Absolutely. And we have, well, in this case, 1,600 pieces of evidence that it can have tremendous impact. Listen, what we're in right now, AB, is a seminal time in our industry. You're watching innovation happen at a pace that we have never seen it happen before. It
Mm-hmm.
is churning. You may recall Moore's Law. Moore's Law was back with the advent and spread of computers. It was a doubling of the processor speed every 18 months with a halving of the cost. So that
Mm-hmm.
was just sort of uh, this measure of progress for our industry. Today, you can apply Moore's Law to everything. Everything is getting churned. You remember we used to talk about ages. So there was uh, the uh, the industrial age. There was the information age. There's the digital age. Well, we're talking about decades within an age. Today, technology is churning so fast that we're dealing in micro ages or
Yeah.
moments. So we're coming out of what would be termed the height of the digital age, and AI is coming in and really taking over the public consciousness. Um, it's not going to last that long where it's the big shiny thing. It's evolving so quickly and getting integrated so quickly, and people are already looking to what's the next thing. Well, the next thing is likely quantum. And so and how long will that last? Nobody really knows, but it's not going to be 3 or 4 decades
Yeah.
as a
Right.
previous
Right.
age would have been defined. What we're seeing is a constant churning of technology. And so we have to be able to keep up with that, uh, with our skilling. And I'll transition very quickly to talk about the importance of skilling, because as these technologies evolve and churn, they are of tremendous value to society, and we're just starting to scratch the surface of what AI can really do. So we have another few years of that seeing development and impact.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be able to skill at the speed of innovation. And this is one of the things that we're doing at Cisco that's so innovative. We have married up skilling to innovation. So as we're innovating as a company, we are skilling right alongside of it. We need to be doing that as an entire industry, because if you don't skill at the speed of innovation, you'll never get the full value of that innovation, and you'll never be able to fully keep up And so that's one of the beauties when we talk about the other impacts of Cisco on the world. I think probably the best thing Cisco has ever done for the world and will continue doing for the world is the Networking Academy program.
Hmm.
Um, NetAcad is just now celebrating. It just has celebrated its 25th year, and has trained up 25 million people over that time. It's life changing. It's literally people that can go in, take a bit of training, get a certification, and all of a sudden have a great paying job in a very established industry and growing industry for the rest of their
Sure.
lives. It's a remarkable program, and one we're very proud of. One of the things that we've done most recently is married up all of our CDA investment efforts with Networking Academy. So as we're making investments in new technology, in technology expansion, we're investing in the skilling right alongside that. So we're not just talking about skilling at the speed of innovation, we're actually doing it right around the world.
That's amazing. And I'm so glad you segued into the Networking Academy because as soon as you mentioned the need for skills, particularly in this tech industry, I was thinking right off the bat NetAcad, but because you oversee NetAcad as well, it seems like the perfect setup for you to be able to marry the two and really, help close that skills gap. Um, this is a question that kind of popped into my head, but there, I think people really do look to Cisco as a leader when it comes to things like CDA and the efforts that we put out there in different countries, whether it's helping build a grid or if it's a NetAcad initiative. I am sure there are leaders at other companies that would love to have something like a CDA or a NetAcad, and they don't, or they're not sure how to get into it. What advice would you give other leaders aiming to develop similar programs within their own companies?
I'm aware through multiple conversations with analysts and others that some have tried. It's all about trust. It's all about making yourself vulnerable, putting yourself out there, and realizing that world leaders aren't just politicians. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they're not just people that you see appearing on the television and in the newspapers every day. They're human beings and they have a desire to do extraordinary things for their country. I have not found a single world leader that isn't wholly dedicated to serving and to lifting up their populations during their terms of service. And that's what we want to be there to do and to help them with. And anybody, any company that has that same desire is capable of doing a CDA type program. We started 10 years ago. We have a 10-year head start. We have 10 years of relationships that we've built. And it's an extraordinary advantage. And it has been through a lot of investment. I mean, full credit to Chuck and our ELT that they
Mm-hmm.
continue to invest in CDA because they see the value of it and they see how it marries up. Obviously, our business goals and what we want to accomplish in terms of growth, but it's also the physical manifestation of Cisco's purpose on the ground to power an inclusive future for all. When people ask, okay, those are nice words, power an inclusive future for all. What does that mean? What's the
Mm-hmm.
proof? Well, we've got 1,600 plus proof points of what that means. They're not just words, it's how we go about our lives, it's how we go about our work lives, our business, and it's how we invest our money. So, none of that's going to change. It's just going to continue to evolve. And anybody that wants to take on the sort of challenges that CDA presents, the sort of opportunities, they can, but they're going to have to make themselves vulnerable. They're going to have to take risk. They're going to have to leave their politics at the border. This is a very important concept. I have seen so many different cultures
Mm-hmm.
over the last 35 years of my career, but in particular the last 10 years running this program. Um, Not everybody wants to adapt to your culture. Not everybody wants to adapt to your beliefs, your values. You have to respect theirs when you go in. And when you go in as respectful of their culture, understanding that you're going to have to tweak the program here and there in order to adapt it so that it's useful, um, then you'll have tremendous success. And we have learned that over time. And to again, leave your politics, leave your culture at the border, because you're going to have to be orienting to theirs in order to be successful.
Beautiful. Perfect advice. And by the way, I think we need to make a T-shirt that says, and I don't want to misquote you, but CDA is the physical manifestation of Cisco's purpose on the ground. Let's let's make that happen. Oh,
It's
that's great.
You and I might be the only two that wear that T-shirt, but it's a good
That's
T-shirt.
okay. That's okay. You know what? It's. I think it's. That's such a great way of explaining it, though. You know, what's the proof? The proof is what you see here. All the work we've done and how countries have been lifted up. I love it. Yeah, I'll proudly wear that T-shirt. So shifting away from work a little bit. I mean, clearly you're incredibly passionate about your role and you dedicate a significant amount of time to CDA initiatives, Netacad, and anything else that's sort of within your purview. When you're not working, I don't know how often you get to not work, but when you step away from work and in those times when you really can kind of take a break, what are some of the hobbies and activities that bring you the most joy?
Well, first and foremost, it's spending time with my family. I mean, when I'll travel 20 to 25 weeks a year, and it's all international travel because we have 50 countries to look after. Um, when I'm home, it's very much family time, and I'm very fortunate. My daughter is an OR nurse. She lives here in Austin, just about
Mm,
25 minutes from us, with our son-in-law, who's a professional golfer and is on the road all the time.
right.
Um, just found out in the last few weeks that I'm going to be a grandfather. So,
Oh,
great.
amazing.
And it's a
Congratulations.
girl, going to be
Oh,
uh, a girl granddad. And
yep.
very excited about that. So that's going to be even more reason to use my time wisely when I am at home. My son lives 15 minutes from us,
Oh, wow.
and so when I'm home, it's family time, and I love it. The the hobby that comes a close second, probably I like to run,
Okay.
and then shortly thereafter, shortly behind that is probably golf when I can get the sort of 5 hours to go out to the course. And
Yep.
then the constant one that I never deviate from, I collect vinyl albums, vinyl records, and
Yes.
I have since I was a kid. I continue to do it. It's now taking up far too much space in the house, but it'll sound a little strange, but when I have the time, I love to just go to one of the used record stores and flip through old albums to see if anything strikes my fancy. So it's a great deal of fun when I am at home.
I love that. I do recall in previous meetings and conversations seeing some of the vinyl behind you in a different room, and I have a nice little but good collection back here, which you can't really see. So I totally agree. I think it's a wonderful medium. Just love looking at the album artwork and reading the notes and seeing who's playing on what and just it just sounds good. It's very organic. So I can definitely relate to that passion.
I'm exactly the same way. It's always fascinating to go through jazz albums and see some of those session players
Oh
that
yeah.
played on everything,
Oh
and
yes.
just the extraordinary quality of the work. And the album, the liner notes, and the things
Yep.
that were written actually on albums as a verse to in little packets for CDs.
That's
I
right.
really get joy out of that.
I totally agree, and I love looking at the liner notes myself. And on that note, I think this is a perfect place to end our conversation. Guy, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time talking to us about CDA, NetAcad, and all the other things that you're doing. And look forward to talking to you some more in the future, probably at some event that we'll both be at, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's wonderful, AB. It's nice to always see you in different parts of the world at different times, and it's a pleasure to be with you here, and I look forward to the next time.
Great. Thank you so much.